this is something that it's a pet peeve of mine when people, whether it's with our program or any program, oh, I've been dieting and I lost whatever. I lost a pound. I lost 5 pounds. I lost whatever. And they beat themselves up. It's like, I only lost 5 pounds or I
Yeah.
only lost a pound. Like, instead of, hey, way to go, good job, right? Celebrate. They beat themselves up. And then if you
Oh
beat
yeah.
yourself up over the small wins, then you actually like subconsciously you discourage yourself from wanting to have those small wins. What's the point? I'm just going to feel terrible and feel like a sack of crap after it. Like, then well, screw it. It's just well to eat whatever I want and gain weight. I'm still going to feel like a sack of crap.
Yeah, for sure.
So
For
you have
sure.
to reframe those small wins to, hey, I'm moving in the right direction here. And
Right.
everybody makes small progress. It's just small progress compounded. When someone drops weight, they notice it losing a pound on the scale. Everybody makes these small incremental changes, but it's just who's compounding and stacking those small wins up,
Mhm.
win after win after win after win.
Welcome to the Total Fitness Bodybuilding Podcast with Lee Hayward and Jeff Samataro. Since 1997, Lee Hayward's Total Fitness Bodybuilding has been online helping guys to build muscle, lose fat, and become the best version of themselves. The goal of this podcast is to provide you with real-world practical fitness and nutrition advice to look your best, improve your health, and feel confident in your own skin so you can live life to the fullest without having your body holding you back from doing the things you want to do. So if you're ready to get started, let's jump into the show.
Welcome to the Total Fitness Bodybuilding Podcast. My name is Lee Hayward, and in today's episode, we're going to dive into the top 3 mistakes that are holding you back from building a lean, ripped, athletic physique. And once we uncover these mistakes and teach you what to do instead, this is going to put you on the fast track to building the body that you want. Now, joining me for today's podcast are a group of my coaching students who are going through the Muscle After 40 Blueprint program. And this was actually taken from a coaching call that we did last week within our Muscle After 40 program, where we dove into the top 3 mistakes and got some real world feedback from some of my students. And they were very generous in sharing their own personal insights, some of the things that they've done in the past, some of the mistakes they made, and how they've corrected those mistakes. So it really puts a real world perspective on things. And I think you'll enjoy this conversation. And again, it gives you a sneak peek of what you can expect if you decide to come on board with the Muscle After 40 Blueprint coaching program. So without further ado, let's jump into the podcast. Like we go through different phases, and like even within our program, like I like to break it down into different phases. First phase is the metabolic reboot, which is basically just building the habit of regular exercise, regular healthy nutrition, and all the lifestyle habits. Kind of like just fill in the gaps and just let your body adapt to this new approach. That's kind of like maintenance phase, if you will. But I mean, we want to set this new maintenance, this metabolic reboot. Then once you've have the foundation laid, then we can step it up, especially if your goal is fat loss. We can get into the fat loss accelerator where we can implement more advanced fat loss strategies, really dial in your nutrition, dial in your cardio and your training, and burn off that stubborn body fat. Then once you get to the point where you're comfortable with how lean you are, we can go into the third phase, which is the lean gain body recomp, which is basically once you've gotten yourself lean enough that you don't want to in a deficit anymore and lose more body fat, we can bump up your calories so that you're no longer in a deficit. You're either at maintenance or maybe a slight surplus, and use that extra energy to grow and fuel your training. So now instead of feeling depleted, you're actually nourished, and now you have that surplus that you can grow from. And it doesn't have to be a massive surplus. Like this is the difference between the bulking approach, because a lot of times when people would bulk, they would consume a massive surplus, like 1,000 plus calorie surplus, and the dirty bulk or the seafood diet bulk, or I'm going to the McDonald's drive-through bulk, that type of thing. And sure, yeah, you bulk all right, but I mean, once you've topped up your glycogen stores, the rest just gets spilled over into body fat. So we want to still eat lean and clean, just higher portions so that you're no longer in a deficit. Now you actually can use that food to fuel muscle growth and feel strong. And then the final phase is now inspire others to follow along in your footsteps. Pass on what you've learned to others, whether you physically teach. Like I know in Paul's case, he's literally doing it because you have the Fitness with Friends group where you're literally teaching people what you've learned and leading by example. But then because you've done what you've done, other people are saying, wow, if he can do it, I can do it too. Or you're inspiring people to get off their butt and take action, right? That's the ultimate transformation right there. Like when you not only got in shape for yourself, but now you're inspiring others to get in shape as well. I mean, that's really full circle. That's what
And
this
it's
is.
personally very satisfying, Lee, because
Yeah.
that speaks beyond myself into other person's lives. And there's the ripple effect. There's the one life transforming another. And who can stop something like that? That builds and builds and grows and grows. The 9 or 10 medal winners that I got to be among have become good friends now, and we're passing on each other's stories.
And
Well,
then
and one thing, the comment that I get frequently, and it's the same with Paul, we can say we didn't start this until later in life. This is not a 20-year-old person trying to, this is not a person in their 60s trying to reclaim the body they had in their 20s. But I didn't have it back then. So it's nice that people can say, yeah, in your 40s, your 50s, and now your 60s and your 70s, you can still get in shape. You can start wherever you are and you can get in shape at this age.
Mhm.
It's not, the age is not the hindrance. And I get that all the time where somebody said, well, when did you start? 2020 at age 56, almost 57. And they're like, wow, okay. Because a lot of times the comment is, hey, is anybody in this fitness group on Facebook, did they start in their 40s or their 50s? And it's like, yeah, here's my pictures. And it's just showing them that, yeah, you can do it. Maybe not as to the point of being on a stage. That probably is not their goal. And that's cool. It was my goal. Okay, great. That works for me. But the point is I started at 56. So it's not reclaiming the athletic body that I had in my 20s, because I can't even say that without laughing. But
The other thing too is that Mike created a physique that's unique and specific to Mike. I created a physique that's unique and specific to me.
Yep.
Between the two of us, we are modeling. Don't look to the influencers. Don't look here. Discover and develop what is true to yourself.
Right.
I got up and I won medals. Mike got up and he won medals. Two different physique journeys, two different aspects of bodybuilding, but both of us trained with a gold medal mentality. We knew what we were doing. We trained with as much vigor as an Olympian athlete, but we were both Mike and I model. Don't look at us and say, I want to be like that. Because we would say, emulate our discipline. Don't try to imitate our physique. It will only be added frustration. And isn't that a terrible thing to condemn a person to an immovable or unrealistic goal? I would much rather inspire the person to the goal of, you've got a strong, thick body. You have no idea what massive, immense amounts of muscle you can add. You've got a lean, athletic body. You have no idea how ripped and jacked you can look. The terminology is there. You can be swole or jacked, but what you are is incredibly good shape. And that's the key.
But there's three types of people that you need to avoid being in order to achieve a lasting health and fitness transformation. I'm going to summarize them in these categories: the quick fix seeker, the victim, and the perfectionist. One, the quick fix seeker. This is the typical scenario that you see so often when it comes to people want to lose weight and get in shape. The crash diet, the fad diet, the miracle supplements. Like, I want to lose weight and I want to lose weight now, or I want to get in shape and I want to get in shape now. And always seeking the immediate results over the long-term sustainability. And the thing that I always like to come back to with this is, who cares how fast you can get in shape in the short term or how fast you can lose weight in the short term? It's, what are you achieving over the long term? And I love to use the analogy of myself. Like when I was going through bodybuilding competitions, I could suffer it out with an extreme cutting diet and achieve the before and after transformation. Like I could be, okay, I'm soft and fat in the before, I'm lean and ripped and on stage in the after, visible abdominal definition. But then as soon as that competition was over, I'd go back to my old habits, regain the weight back again, and then balloon up. So then someone seen me, okay, before at the contest, and then someone ran into me 6 months later, like, what the hell happened to you? Like you're not the same guy who competed 6 months ago. I mean, look like the Michelin man. Because I would literally balloon up. Sometimes my weight would fluctuate 40 to 50 pounds between contest and off season because I was just focusing on the short term, get in shape for the contest, but I never had a long term sustainable system in place. And we see that so often, like people go on a low carb cutting diet, for example, like keto or carnivore or intermittent fasting or whatever, insert fad diet of choice. Sure, you can lose weight in the short term, but if it's not a long term solution, meaning it's not something you can do as a lifestyle for the rest of your life, it's only short term. And then if you can't sustain it, then the results are not going to be sustainable. You're going to regain that weight back again. If any of you know people who are going through New Year's resolution weight loss programs right now, you're going to see a lot of that. You know, we see it all the time, but especially around the New Year's for sure. Can anyone relate to that? The quick fix seeker? Anyone want to share any comment? Mike, I know you that was how you started your weight loss journey, and you actually did achieve good results with some of these extreme approaches, carnivore, intermittent fasting, but it wasn't the long-term solution you were looking for.
And it wasn't enjoyable. When you look back on it, you didn't realize how little energy you had. I certainly didn't. And that's one thing that concerns me now, with every diet program out there, they are pushing Ozempic with it. Weight Watchers now is with Ozempic. And Noom, which I did Noom prior to my starting working out, and I lost 30 pounds on it. And it's Noom now has Ozempic with it. I don't know what the long-term effects are of people taking Ozempic for weight loss, but I do know a couple of people that have gone off of it have gained all the way back immediately and then some. So I don't know here again, that's a quick fad type thing right now. I don't know that it's a good one.
It's so new, we really don't know. But there are situations, I think, where something like that could give somebody hope to start the process along, especially like people who are extremely heavy or extremely overweight. And like, I've tried everything and nothing seems to work, or something along those things. Maybe that could give them the motivation, like, hey, this is the boost you need. But you can't rely on that alone. Like, if that is your weight loss solution, take this and just have it curb your appetite, but you continue the same diet and lifestyle that you had before, just eating less because you physically can't eat as much. That's a recipe for disaster. And it's even been shown that a lot of that weight loss is coming from lean mass. It's probably like a 50-50 fat and muscle. I mean, like that's not a success because if you're losing muscle, that's your metabolically active tissue. If you do it with better eating habits and better exercise habits and everything else, and this is kind of like the crutch or the jump start you needed, I can see the benefit of it. But again, it's such a fine line because ultimately the diet and the exercise of the lifestyle, that's what's causing the long-term change, not appetite suppression,
Right.
With whatever it's from.
Well, and that goes right along with me doing intermittent fasting, because I was doing DEXA scans every 3 months back then. So it wasn't just the intermittent fasting wasn't just taking the fat away; it was also taking the muscle.
It's such a big thing, and unfortunately, a lot of people have to learn this the hard way before this sinks in. I mean, like I'm as guilty as anybody, but I try to pass on what I've learned, or at least shortcut the learning process, so people don't have to struggle with that for longer than needed. The next one that I want to discuss is the victim. This is a big one we see where people play the victim mentality, adopting the mindset where you're helpless in a situation, even if you're not truly the victim or you haven't been wrong to the extent you claim. So this behavior often involves exaggerating the suffering, the misfortune, and deflecting the responsibility and seeking sympathy or attention from others. So in the fitness world, in the fitness, diet, exercise, weight loss world, we often see this showing up with people saying, I'm overweight because I have bad genetics. Or, I'm big boned. That's another one, right? How often have you heard people say, I'm big boned? Or I don't have time to work out because I'm working full time, or I have kids, or I have X amount of responsibilities or chores or volunteer, or whatever. I don't have time because. A lot of times I've heard guys say, I can't eat healthy because my wife does the cooking. I have to eat what she cooks. Or I can't eat healthy because I'm on the road. I can't eat healthy because of insert whatever circumstance. And bottom line, when you're starting to blame others for your circumstances and refusing to take responsibility for your own actions and choices, that is the victim mentality. So we really need to focus on, like, where do we have control? Even if it's not perfect, where do we have some control and where can we be better than we were before? And crazy thing is, we have a lot more control than we think, right? It's amazing. Once you start getting into this, you'll be blown away by how much control you have over your eating. And like I use the example like over the holidays. A lot of people say, well, okay, the holidays, I don't have control over those meals. Even if you went totally off the rails on Christmas Day and Thanksgiving Day and New Year's Day and what, like all these different days, or your birthday, that's one day. If you started again the next day, it's amazing how much control you have, because those little blips really in the greater scheme of things would not hinder anybody's progress long term if that's all it was. It's when those little blips turn into, instead of a holiday, it turns into a holly month. Yeah, right? Of being a month of binge eating, right? And using that as the justification. And how many times have I seen people like, oh, I have bad genetics and I'm overweight, and they're drinking, a sugary soda, and they got their bag of McDonald's from the drive-through, and like all these things that they have total control over, but oh no, it's their genetics that's causing them to be overweight. Right? It's not their choices or the fact that they don't exercise and they eat whatever they want, and right, they blame it on something else. I was looking for that outside excuse. It's not my fault. It's someone else's fault or some other excuse's fault. Has anybody fallen into that or have any stories they want to share about the victim mindset?
This is where I want to speak.
Okay, sure. Yeah.
The victim mentality can create two things. It can create a hero or it can create a villain. The hero says, I'm not going to do this. This happened to me, and I'm not going to let it happen to other people. So they become the advocate. They help other people. They pull people. They become an example to help others avoid what they've done. The villain turns things around and says, I was hurt, and I'm going to make sure I hurt lots of other people too. And that's what I did. I became the villain. I attacked and dismantled every opportunity I had, any sports program, any athlete, any person who had any shred of athleticism. I made it as my personal mission to take that person under my radar and destroy them. And I had the ability to do that. I had the verbal skills and the debate skills to make people look like absolute idiots. And I used it harshly, and I used it well. Unfortunately, I alienated so many people because of my personal vendetta against athleticism. And the greatest casualty was myself. And I created what was called learned helplessness. I can't change. You're not going to change me, but I'm stuck this way. There's nothing I can do about it. I can't change. So I might as well live my life as miserably as I can and hope for the end. So I became the victim. Had I not had that life-changing event, I would know what the end of date at the end of that hyphen would be, 1954 hyphen 2016, 2017 actually, when that event took place. So I knew when that end date would come. So the victim mentality has two powerful potentials involved, but the villain is just as powerful as the hero. They have exactly the same aim. It's what do they do with it? And I chose to destroy. The villain, the hero chooses to save. And now I have a chance to restore, to undo the evil that my tongue and my mind has done. And I'm doing that. So out of the victim can become hero too. The villain can become a hero. So that for me is my story. I definitely identify with the victim.
And for the guys who are new here, I mean, Paul won a debate to ban sports from school, wasn't it? Like, just want to share a little bit about that for people who haven't heard that story.
I was absolutely disgusted with the toxic coaching I was seeing happening around me. So I took on the class. I said, it's you against me. Bring on your arguments. And I just choom, 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 choom. And they went, ah. And my next door was the principal's office, and he was listening to this. And after it was all over, we had a team of people who won the debate. And Mr. Miller did. And the principal walked in and said, that may be true, but we're still keeping sports.
And again, good on the principal for that, right?
Yes, indeed. Good on him. But it shows you, Lee, how completely vitriolic my hatred was to athletics and athleticism. So the transformation for me has genuinely been 180 degrees. I am so a powerful advocate for it. And the arguments that I used, I've gone back to them in my mind and thought, what would I have done to attack that? What logical flaw was in that argumentation the students didn't recognize, but I would? And what would I do to dismantle it? So I've got that going on in my mind as well. But how would I destroy it? But that was, I'm not proud, whimsically proud, but not genuinely proud of that story.
Yeah, I think that's the challenge, Paul, is we've got so much information out there. We're going to hear what we want to hear if we don't want to take action, because it's simpler to say it's the food company's fault for what they've done. It's my genetics. I always have high blood sugar. There's always something to where you can dismiss yourself. And I feel bad because I know a couple people, but I think I was there once you try to go all in and then you realize, wait, this didn't work. So, I'm not doing this again. So there's different stages of victimization, I guess.
Great point, because we're surrounded by that. Like, hey, it's not your fault, right? It's the food company's fault, right? It's the food company's fault that they put all these addictive chemicals in the foods and stuff like that. Yes and no. I mean, sure, it's out there, but you still have control whether you eat it or not. We have the ability to eat a pristine, perfect diet if we choose to. You can eat all natural, unprocessed, healthy foods that was never available before in the history of humanity. It's all available at your fingertips, but also the most toxic crap that you want to put in your body is available as well. I don't know, it's like a paradox. Like we are so we have so much at our disposal, right? Good and bad. And what do you choose to take in? The same with, like, we can look at information. Like, some people bitch and complain about, oh, social media and the internet and it's corrupting the minds of the young and all the social media and the internet and this means of communication can be the most powerful tool if used properly, or it can be, a very destructive one if used improperly. You have to choose your diet of information and calories wisely.
I just tell myself, if a gun's not pointed at my head, making me do something, then I'm making the choice.
Yeah,
That's the bottom line.
that is true. Yeah. Like, nobody's forcing someone to smoke a cigarette or drink an alcoholic drink or eat that donut or go to the McDonald's drive-through or order DoorDash or whatever it happens to be. Like, nobody's forcing you to do that. That's all on you, right?
But that's the crazy thing, is we still make these dumb choices over and over and over again. In fact, most of the population now is way overweight and no concern even to want to do anything about it. I feel like, well, here I don't want to criticize because I was there too. So,
Right.
I like adding books to people's libraries. So here's one for you by Michael Moss. It's called Salt, Sugar, Fat, How the Food Giants Hooked Us. And it was done in 2013. And he's an investigator. He's actually won a Pulitzer Prize for his work. But what he has done is he has pointed out how the food giants hooked us. But what he has done differently than other writers is he's showing how they can fight back, what you can do to undo the effects of salt and sugar and fat in our diet. It's available, I think, on Amazon. I think they might have copies. But
This is here?
yes, that's the one. Yes, I have that. There's one that's Hooked. Our Food, Free Will, and How the Food Giants Exploit Our Addictions is another one that he's done. But that was a follow-up of his 2013. He just really got a groundswell. And so the second book, I think Hooked, came out, that really dove deep into how we can fight these addictions. And that really was a book I really enjoyed. I love passing on books to people because these are resources that you can go to again and again and again and pass them on to people and say, you should read this. This is a fabulous thing to look at, rather than YouTube videos and Netflix videos, because not everybody has them, but everybody has access to a library. and to books around them. So I like passing that on. It's well worth reading.
And it is also an audiobook version as well.
Yes, as I understand it.
So it's right there. It says on Audible as well,
Yeah.
audiobook. I gotta say, I love Audible. I use it a lot, especially like driving or at the gym or going for walks and stuff. I mean, I've digested so many books through audio that I normally would never have done if it wasn't for Audible. So I thoroughly enjoy it. But the crazy thing is, even if you were on a budget and didn't want to spend the money on an Audible membership, a lot of them you can search on YouTube and get the full audio version. Now, granted, that's writing and piracy issues, but very often you will find the full version of a lot of popular audiobooks on YouTube. You just search for the title and you can listen to it through YouTube that way. But
Sometimes with the audiobooks, you get little PDF benefits from it. And sometimes the audible book may have like interviews with different people. Book by Dr. Josh Axe, Think This, Not That. In between each chapter, each mindset, he has an interview with a world-changing expert in that particular area. It's a fabulous book, but you also get downloaded PDFs if you're part of that, the Audible audience, and that he provides as a benefit for people. So that's for me, one of the personal benefits of getting an audiobook as opposed to actual physical book, because you get all kinds of other little perks and bells and whistles as well. But I love passing that on to my folks here, because to be an empowered or an intellectual bodybuilder, be an intellectual athlete is a powerful thing. Sound mind, sound body.
I'll certainly add it to my list just to continue on with our lessons
Yeah.
here. So we covered about the victim, and a lot of people can relate to that one. But this final one, this is a phase where a lot of us are going to be at this stage of the game, the perfectionist. This can be a challenge. So the perfectionist is someone who holds themselves to extremely high standards, often fearing mistakes or failure. Perfectionism can be a double-edged sword. While it can drive people to achieve great things, it can also lead to stress, burnout, and dissatisfaction. So in fitness, we often see perfectionists spending excessive amounts of time planning and organizing and preparing and almost doing so as a form of procrastination. So like once I get the perfect diet with the perfect calories, like my macro calculations, my meal plan all timed out, once I get that perfect workout program with the body part split and the exercises and the sets and the reps and I get everything planned out, then I'm going to start. And they're using that perfectionism as a form of procrastination because, well, what's the point of starting if it's not perfect? I got to wait till everything's perfect, then I'm going to start, right? So it very often leads to overthinking and indecision and delays and all this unnecessary stress as well. So I mean, you very often get caught up in this, and the problem is the more you read and the more you start absorbing, then it creates that information overload, and then you start the cycle of self-doubt and constantly questioning yourself. So I mean, you had your perfect plan, and then the next thing you know, there's another YouTube video or another podcast or something came up, and it totally goes opposite of your perfect plan, and you're like, oh shit, now my perfect plan's not perfect anymore, and I got to try and do this plan, right? It's like, oh, I had the perfect. I'll just give you an extreme example. I had the perfect vegan plant-based diet based on all the latest doctors and studies and research. And then next thing you know, there's a carnivore video or a carnivore podcast comes out. And you're like, wait a minute, these plants are terrible. I can't eat those plants. I got to go carnivore. Like that's the extreme side of nutrition. And the crazy thing is, you'll have doctors and experts preaching plant-based. You'll have doctors and experts preaching carnivore, and both are convinced they're right, and both are convinced if you eat the other, you're going to die. That's right. If you eat a vegetable, it's going to kill you. If you eat a piece of meat, it's going to kill you. Look out. Instead of seeing the bigger picture and the best of both. So the bottom line here, just focus on being better than you were before. Give yourself permission to take imperfect action and figure it out as you go. Like just jump in. We'll figure it out as we go. And this is something that I've had to deal with a lot, not just in fitness, but in other areas. And this whole perfectionist thing, this can apply in your career, it can apply in so many other areas. For me, I'll give you a prime example that just recently, the podcast. I heard so many business gurus talking about podcasts and how much work was created and involved with creating a podcast. And And I was like, oh man, I want to create a podcast. And I was thinking one of these days I'm going to do a podcast, but I got to have the proper setup and the proper studio, microphones, and yada, yada, yada. I got to have all this set up. And when I get all that sorted out, and I also get someone hired who's going to manage it for me and do it all, then I'm going to start that podcast. And I kept procrastinating for years. I was wanting to do a podcast and I just procrastinate. And finally I said, just fuck it. I'm going to create a podcast. Like, and basically like this, what we're doing now, like this could very well be a podcast. Like I didn't overthink it. I said, who cares if I have the perfect audio? Who cares if I have a studio or this and that? Like I'll just figure it out. I just jumped in and did it. Now, could it be better? Of course it can be better. And I'm sure if, in a year from now, 5 years from now, whatever, if I'm still podcasting, you'll see the evolution of it happen. But it's good enough. Just start now, get it out there. And the crazy thing is, like a lot of the best content that I really enjoy, it's not always perfect, pristine, studio quality, edited, visual. It's just raw, real, legit content. I'll give you an example of someone that I love listening to, and some of you guys probably have heard of him. Alan Watts. Anyone familiar with Alan Watts? Paul is. If you're not, like, do a YouTube search. There's hundreds of Alan Watts videos. He's a philosopher from back in the 60s and 70s. Brilliant mind, like ahead of his time, but some of the concepts and things that he talked about. And this is just tape recording audios from back in the 60s and 70s. And like, it's nothing fancy, but the content and the quality of what he's speaking about is just jaw dropping. I mean, it's brilliant compared to a lot of the crap that we see posted today. And I'm fascinated with listening, and I could listen to that stuff. And this is audio from back in the 60s and 70s. So like it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be good enough. Figure it out as you go. Like that's something that I really found made a big difference for me. And now that I'm doing it, I mean, I love the podcast we do. I mean, could they be better? Absolutely, but I find it's a lot of fun. I get a lot of content out that way, and I can really connect with people through them. Anybody want to share their feedback or experiences with perfectionism? Because I know this is a big one. Mike, I wanted to just touch on you because I know you've been the perfectionist and you still are to a certain degree.
You know what? You finally convinced me to let it go on being the perfectionist, and it was the most liberating experience. Not to panic because I didn't have the perfect workout, or that I didn't get all the way through the workout when I just had to go to a meeting or something.
Right.
It didn't matter. That one day did not matter. It didn't affect me. The same when I had surgery. I couldn't work out for a period of time. It didn't make a difference ultimately. I mean, yeah, sure, I would have preferred being working out, because I had been doing it. So I felt kind of weird that I wasn't. But you realize the 2 weeks when I had my prostate surgery, 2 weeks that I had to take off, it took me 2 weeks to get back to where I was. It didn't affect anything. The same, having to lift lighter. Okay. We worked on form, but finally getting rid of that and realizing that you don't have to be perfect 100% of the time was a liberating experience. I mean, mentally, I wasn't as stressed.
I think that's the big thing. It just relieves all that stress, which it doesn't serve you.
Well, and realizing no one's looking over my shoulder. Hey, did you do that perfect workout? There's no one there, going to smack me because I didn't do it exactly, or the right number of sets or reps or whatever. And realizing it's okay. It was huge for me.
Just talking about the stress. One thing that I find fascinating, I've seen it with some world-class athletes. They almost like don't care. Like what I mean by don't care is like they're carefree. And I give you the example I mentioned. Peter Attia did a podcast with Tadej Pogacar, the current Tour de France winner, who's won it a couple times. He's won it, he's lost it, he's won it again, and he's got this like such a nonchalant attitude. Like, yeah, I lost it, big deal. I'll win it again. Like he's so laid back and doesn't care. And even when Peter Attia was interviewing me, he said, like, oh, this must really piss you off, this aspect of the sport or this aspect or the fact that you lost and everything. No, it doesn't bother me at all. Like he just doesn't care. And another one that I find fascinating, like if you ever watch any interviews with Ronnie Coleman, like Ronnie Coleman, arguably the best bodybuilder in the world, and he's just so laid back and like doesn't care. Like when he's talking about his diet, oh, I eating good old chicken, right? Lifting ain't nothing but a peanut, lightweight, baby. Like he's just so laid back. Like he's not. He doesn't appear to be stressed out. Now, again, who knows what they're like behind closed curtains, in their own situation, but it seems on the surface that they're very laid back, or they can like water off the duck's back. They're not stressing out over it, or at least they seem to be managing it well. Right? Where some people are stressed out over the littlest, stupidest details. Like I missed a workout or I missed a meal. Like, oh shit, the world's coming to an end. I mean, I've been there too, like freaking out over stuff that in the greater scheme of things doesn't matter.
And the one thing I am working on now is going to the gym and somebody's on the equipment that I want. Why are you on my equipment? It's not my gym, but why are you on my equipment? And realizing, yeah, okay, they're working out. Don't get stressed about this. Now, if they're sitting there playing on their phone, that may be a different story. I may say something like, how soon are you going to be done or whatever. But yeah, walking into the gym yesterday and the first machine I needed, somebody was on it. It's like, that's okay. You can handle this.
There's one thing about stress I want to point out. When I was early in my journey of fat loss, the body transformation journey, one of the instructors at SAIT, her name is Jenny Gilbert, sports psychologist, said, I want to distinguish between stress and eustress, EU or good stress. And she said, stress, when it's badly placed, is wrapped around an unachievable or a blockable goal. And so when you find it being blocked, or when you find your way is not moving forward, you get increased stress. But when eustress, good stress, is wrapped around something that will not be broken, but you can, like as Mike just said, he can adapt, then the stress is still there, but you use that stress moment to be creative, to find an innovation, to try to find a way around it. So use eustress or good stress, which is necessary to keep you moving forward, but to be innovative. You're not losing sight of your goal per se, but you are being innovative and creative to work around it. And so she said, Paul, keep in mind that your journey will have an end point, and there'll be blockades along the way. There'll be barriers along the way. How well can you work around them toward your end goal? It's a process, not that you've got to get to that date, come hell or high water. Get there and be adaptive as you go. You're using stress positively rather than negatively. So I just wanted to pass that on to our group, using stress positively rather than getting stressed out about stress.
There's one more thing that I just wanted to finish off with, and then we'll clear it up. This was an interesting podcast that I watched from Andrew Huberman, and it talks about optimal protocols for studying and learning. Now, this was geared towards education, but there's a lot of things that we can take away to apply to fitness as well. But they took 3 groups of students and block up their time, and they focused on group 1 was going to study, and then take a test. Group 2 was going to study, take a practice test, and then the official test. And then group 3 was just going to study once and then do practice test, and then the real test. And they wanted to see, okay, who gets the best results on the official final test? The group that spent all their time studying and just did one test, the group that spent most of their time studying, did a practice test, and then the real test, or the group who just spent one block of time studying and then just did multiple practice tests. Now, they were able to learn from the practice tests as well. Like they went over it and say, okay, like this is where you went wrong. This should be the proper answer. So they could learn from the practice tests, just to clarify. What they found was the group that did the most practice tests demolished the other groups. The order of the test scores afterwards on the official tests, group 1 did the worst. That's the ones who studied the most and then took one test. Group 2 did a little better. They took a practice test before the official test. But the one who studied the least but did the most practice tests, they actually performed the best. So I'm just thinking, like, when it comes to perfectionism, it really goes to show, like, stop trying to figure it out and have the perfect approach before you start. Like, just figure it out as you go. Good enough is good enough, and then just put it into action. and then we'll learn from that. Like, think of your first workout or your first diet. That's my practice test. If it works, great. If it doesn't work, great. We'll figure out where we screwed up and we'll make it better. And then you take another like practice and then we'll reevaluate it. How is that working? Is it working good? Where is it not working good? Where can we improve it? And just think of it like that, the practice tests, instead of someone, once I get that perfect program, like I'm going to read all these books, I'm going to watch all these videos, I'm going to attend these seminars, I'm going to get this certification. Once I get it all laid out, then I'm going to start my program. Like, no, that's just a form of procrastination. Focus on just jumping in the water. I always like to use the analogy of, if you want to learn how to swim, like, are you going to watch videos of people learning how to watch people swimming? Are you going to read books about swimming? Are you going to listen to podcasts about swimming? Or are you just going to get your ass in the water? That's how you learn to swim. You can watch videos and podcasts and books till you're blue in the face, and that's not going to help you swim. Like, you have to physically get your ass in the water if you're going to swim. Same when it comes to getting in shape. Like, get yourself in action. Something's better than nothing, and then we can always work on improving it as we go.
What Huberman discovered was what we discovered in education: the difference between process and accomplishment. Group 1 was an accomplishment-based group. Group 3 was a process-based group. And Group 2 is kind of an amalgam of the two. One was not better than the other. When you have an accomplishment-based group, you find yourself focusing on that goal. And so you're not quite knowing what it is, but you know you want to get there. But with the process, you move yourself along. You learn from each step along the way, and you realize you've got a goal, but I'm learning these new things. I'm learning more new things. I'm learning more new things. And so you build on your successes as opposed to crashing on your failures. And actually, you learn more from your failures in Group 3 than you would in Group 1. You learn, and sometimes students who would get like 0 or 1 out of the 10 it was wonderful, because now you know what you shouldn't be doing. You know where you shouldn't be going. The process is much more important than the achievement. That how are you getting there? So the process, as opposed to, I want a physique and this is the way it's going to happen. Because if something interferes, you've lost your desire to get that great physique. There's no more weight. There's no more free weights. They're all on Planet Fitness machines, right? So, what am I going to do? Whereas you're realizing the process is, I got to exercise these muscles, these muscles, these muscles, these muscles, and this is what's going to result. Becoming more adaptive is key in the process. You learn and you grow and you change, but you know what the principles are along the way. And that was liberating. Where Mike was liberated by perfectionism, I was liberated by the fact that just because something is taken away does not stop the process. I just have to figure out, what was it I'm supposed to learn? There's no squat machine at our gym at SAIT. There's no leg extensions machine. But I had to learn exercises that would do the same effect without all of these machines. It was all free weights, barbells, and there was the squat racks and so on. But I did remarkably well for what I had to work with, because I understood the process. What muscle groups am I trying to exercise? Does this exercise target it? Let's go for it. And my coach was very adaptive. He was very creative, but he said, try this exercise, like bent leg dog lifts for our RDLs that work the hamstrings, and all kinds of things that I would do for my quad development, which was one of the weaker areas. But it was greatly, absolutely great to learn. You do not have to become a prisoner to the machines in your gym. You can be liberated when you know what the principles are.
Well, I hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Total Fitness Bodybuilding Podcast. And if you did, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the podcast, and if you know someone who could benefit from today's episode, please feel free to share it with them. I mean, if you could help us to spread the word, that's going to help to get this message out there and allow us to create more content like this and reach more people and just create that positive impact all around. And if you would like some help with your own fitness goals, maybe it's building muscle, losing fat, improving your health, getting in your best shape. If you would like some help with that, then feel free to reach out to me. I have my contact information down in the show notes below, and you can book in for a free one-on-one strategy session coaching call with me, and we can discuss a realistic action plan that's right for you. And if I feel that you're a good fit, I may invite you to come on board and join our VIP coaching program. And if it's not a good fit and I feel that I'm not the right person to help you, then I'm not going to give you hype or BS, but I will point you in the right direction to somebody who can help you. I mean, I've got a large network of people in the fitness industry. So if I don't feel that you're a good fit for our coaching program or that I can help you, I'll be able to point you in the right direction to somebody who can. So either way, at the end of your free strategy session coaching call, you'll walk away with better insights on what you need to do next in order to reach your health and fitness goals. So that clues it up for today's episode. And we'll be back again next Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time with another episode of the Total Fitness Bodybuilding Podcast. Take care. Over and out.